I know these are dark times, but there's always light. Don't tell me things can't change. They can, and they do. That's America.
President-elect Joe Biden prepares to take the oath of office, and Donald Trump bids farewell after a tumultuous 4 years as President of the United States. We take a look back at a legacy tinged with controversy and a look ahead to the incoming Biden administration and the President-elect's vow to unite the American people. Hello, I'm Arnold Naidu, and this is The Heat. In less than 24 hours, President-elect Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. He inherits a nation in crisis, from the coronavirus pandemic to a shaky economy and political divisions on the rise. Biden will spend the first 100 days in office reversing some of Trump's actions in a bid to heal a divided nation. But can the incoming administration deliver on its promise? We'll get to that in just a moment, but first let's go to CGTN's Roy Ruttenberg. Roy, walk us through the inauguration preparations and what we can expect tomorrow, Wednesday.
Well, the President-elect Joe Biden and the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will go through the traditional Inauguration Day ceremonies in a very a-traditional sort of way. Like their predecessors, they will be sworn in on the steps of the U.S. Capitol right behind me. They will be involved in an escort to the White House. They'll also lay a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery for the fallen soldiers. But the escort will be different from previous years. There won't be the type of crowds gathered on the side of the streets. There won't be large convoys involved. And then they will arrive at the White House. And notably, we all remember that image 4 years ago from when the Obamas welcomed the Trumps to the White House. That, of course, we understand will not happen. And then throughout the day, there will be celebratory events after the inauguration around 12 local. In the evening, there will be balls, all of it virtually held. The Biden incoming administration urging people to stay at home and enjoy the celebrations because of COVID. There will also be what's being called a parade across America. That's different than the parade that we would normally see here. Really trying to address both the COVID considerations that are involved and also the security considerations. Somewhere between 20 and 30,000 National Guard have descended on downtown Washington, D.C., creating a red zone around the U.S. Capitol and the White House with really very limited access. So we won't see those crowds on the mall and those type of celebrations that we're used to. But as you said, there will be a new president inaugurated in accordance with the Constitution. Anand?
Roy, of course, President Trump will be skipping the inauguration. He's already told us that. He would be staging his own send-off. What do we know about his own post-presidency plans? What happens after he leaves the White House?
He will be staging his own send-off, and it's, I would argue to say, much different than what he possibly planned, and that's because of the events of recent here at the U.S. Capitol, the staging of the Capitol earlier this month. And that's notable because at his send-off, several top Republicans, we understand, including the vice president, will be skipping his farewell. Now, Donald Trump did put out a final message in the last few hours, a pre-recorded message, 20 minutes about, again, sounding very presidential, right? This is when he doesn't really go off script and he reads what's been written, but he touted what he called his accomplishments, including what he said was creating the greatest economy in the history of the world. He did notably wish the incoming administration success and wish them luck. That's a sharp departure from previous sentiments that he's expressed, refusing to acknowledge the outcome of the elections and quite atypically not having contacted the winner of that election, not having contacted Joe Biden to concede or to congratulate him. And then he will depart roughly at 8 a.m. before the ceremonies actually happen here. He will depart for Florida, for Mar-a-Lago, where he and his wife will continue their residence. Now, what will they do afterwards is unclear. I imagine if the trial against him in the Senate goes forth following the impeachment, he'll be busy getting together a legal team. And then we have to ask what happens with brand Trump. Will he use it in the coming months where there are still runoff elections for congressional congressional seats? Will he use it to endorse candidates? Will he use that to continue up to 2022 for the midterms? Or will he simply stay back and stay quiet? Anybody who knows Donald Trump thinks the latter is all but impossible, and we'll see what he does next.
That's true, Roy. Lots of questions there. That's CGTN's Roy Ruttenberg reporting. Thank you. Well, there's a lot to get to. Let's get straight to our panel. Brandon Brice is a political commentator and host of the radio show StraightTalk. He joins us from Detroit. From New York, Amy Holmes is a writer for HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher and a columnist for the Swiss weekly Die Weltwoche. Steve Chaggaris is a political analyst and commentator, and he joins us here in Washington, D.C. Well, welcome to all of you to the show. And Brandon Brice, let me start with you. In less than 24 hours, President Trump will leave office. And as we reported, it's been a pretty tumultuous 4 years with President Trump as president. Here's part of what the president had to say in his farewell address. Let's listen.
And we replaced NAFTA with the groundbreaking USMCA. That's Mexico and Canada, a deal that's worked out very, very well. Also, and very importantly, we imposed historic and monumental tariffs on China, made a great new deal with China.
So that was about a 20-minute speech that the president made. It was recorded and released to the media earlier today, Brandon. He's talking up there about his economic record, but as he leaves office, what will he be remembered for?
So, you know, this is interesting because this is typical Donald Trump. You can't deny that the president, before COVID, had one of the best economies. I wouldn't say, in 100 years, but he definitely was able to turn the economy around. But the challenge is now, where do we go from here? Donald Trump, do I think that this is the end of Donald Trump? Absolutely not. But I think now the conversation needs to be on Joe Biden's first 100 years, specifically around, he coming into the White House, he's got a crisis to deal with, and let alone his own party may not necessarily be with him. I'm talking about the progressives. So I think the conversation is, whether Donald Trump continues to stay active in American politics and support candidates for 2024, that's to be discovered. But right now, as of 24 hours, this is the Joe Biden presidency show, and he's coming in with a supermajority.
Right, and Brandon, we can talk about President Trump himself. We don't know whether he'll be running for office again. He can, if he wants to, in 2024. But there's also something known as Trumpism, the movement that he started. Will that endure, do you think, even if he's off the political scene?
You know what's ironic is that it's actually going to come down to how hard are Democrats going to press with the further impeachments in the Senate. Are they going to walk away because now they control the White House, the Senate, and the House, and the courts are at least hearing their side? Are they going to walk away and focus towards this unity piece, or are they going to move to prove a point? Here's what's ironic. My thoughts are, if they push and add more fuel to the flame, we could see in next year the states possibly go red.
Amy, what's your view on that, on what happens to Donald Trump in the weeks and months after he leaves office?
Well, I'm just still trying to absorb that he's no longer going to be our president. And I think a lot of the media is, still in that transition process themselves and won't quite believe it until he gets into Air Force One to fly off that one last time as President of the United States. But I do understand from sources that now soon to be former President Donald Trump intends to raise money for a PAC that he's already set up and to weigh in on the midterm elections with endorsements for Republicans or challengers to incumbent Republicans. What that means in 2024, that's 4 years away. Who knows what Donald Trump has up his sleeve, but he certainly wants to remain politically relevant. The question, though, is after the attack on Capitol Hill, will he remain relevant? And you already see Senate now Minority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell telling his fellow Republicans in the United States Senate that should the impeachment push come to a trial in the Senate, they should vote their conscience. They should go their own way. Now, if I were being Machiavellian, I would advise the Senate, let those Republicans who are safe or retiring vote for conviction of Donald Trump. If you get up to 17, Donald Trump can't run in 2024. And those other Republicans who do want to run for president in 2024, like Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Josh Hawley, Marco Rubio, etc., let them vote against conviction and keep that Trump base and appeal to that Trump base 4 years from now.
Steve Chaggaris, there's also been some significant developments in the Republican Party just in the past few days. And, you know, we know that over the past 4 years, the party has marched in lockstep with this president, no matter how controversial that may have been. But just in the past 24 hours, for instance, we noticed that with the president barely out of office, one of his key allies in Congress, the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, appears to have turned on him. McConnell says, referring to that mob that went up on Capitol Hill a week ago, McConnell says the group that ransacked Capitol Hill was, quote, provoked by Trump. Let's listen to what the Senate Majority Leader had to say.
The last time the Senate convened, we had just reclaimed the Capitol from violent criminals who tried to stop Congress from doing our duty. The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people.
So, Steve, how do we explain this break now in the Republican Party?
Well, you have to remember that any time a party loses the White House, there's always a vacuum in who the leader is going to be of the party. And so now everybody's trying to make their mark. Mitch McConnell has decided that, you know, it's his feeling that Trumpism moving forward isn't going to necessarily be about Donald Trump specifically and about Trump's behavior, but perhaps some of the things that Donald Trump espoused as a candidate and as president. And things that he said and moved forward that resonated with voters who were turned off by the Obama-Biden presidency and vice presidency in the 8 years prior. And so I think he's looking toward the future of the party, which is not necessarily saying we're going to carry water for Donald Trump and defend him to the ends of the earth. However, we are, as a Republican Party, do have things that we have fought for in the past, and we're going to continue to fight for in the future, and also do that in a way where we're going to try to speak to people who were inclined to support Donald Trump. So it's good. It's an interesting needle to try to thread. It's a pretty small needle to thread because he's going to have a lot of folks in the Republican Party, people who are going to be running for president in 2024, people who are running for re-election in 2022, who are going to look at it and say, I need to attach myself or continue to attach myself to Donald Trump, the former president, in case I need his help. In terms of enthusiasm, in terms of financial help running for office and whatnot. So that's going to be an interesting fight moving forward.
Well, Steve, if I could add one thing to what Steve is saying, one of the things that does complicate things for Republicans when it comes to Donald Trump is that we just saw in the Georgia runoff election that when Donald Trump campaigned about himself, his own whinging over the presidential election, Republicans lost those 2 Senate races. So they found when the issue was entirely focused on Donald Trump, that wasn't good for them. And now they're in the minority in the United States Senate. So if they can hang on to the issues that Steve is saying, that's going to be an interesting question because that does pit the free market, U.S. Chamber of Commerce wing of the Republican Party against the populists who, did not like the NAFTA trade deal. Right. Also on the populist side, they like the idea of a higher minimum wage, for example. So how Republicans are going to sort out some of these ideological conflicts, that's something they're going to need to do between now, the midterms, in 2024.
Well, and to Amy's point on that as well, and I think one of the reasons why McConnell has taken this sharp turn is because, look, McConnell was directly affected by those Georgia losses. And he lost his majority in the Senate because of those 2 races. Right. And he's seeing moving forward that perhaps Donald Trump's influence on Republican voters might not be as big of a deal as it might have been 2 months, 6 months, or even a year ago. And so he's really taking a bet that Trump is starting to fade, and this is a time to pivot away from him.
Brandon, let's look at what Joe Biden plans as soon as he takes office. I mean, we've been hearing a lot of conversation and talk over the past few days about his immigration bill. He's going to send a bill to Congress either on the first day or at least in the first week. And that bill is pretty radical. One of its main provisions is that it will provide for legal status for 11 million people who are currently in the country illegally. And if we look at Donald Trump, I mean, when he came into office, he did something very different. He issued a travel ban, which Democrats call the Muslim ban. He placed huge obstacles on people seeking entry into the United States. We saw those pictures of children in cages. In that respect, he actually continued a policy that was started by the Obama administration. He empowered ICE. But if we look at this bill that he wants to send to Congress right now, do you think it's going to go anywhere?
Well, here's the reality. I mean, right now, Joe Biden, once again, has a majority. And so if it were ever not going to go anywhere, it could go now. But this is what's interesting. You know, Joe Biden, who's had an almost 50-year term in the Senate, why didn't this get done then? That's the big question here. But here's the other thing is I think Donald Trump missed a big opportunity when it came to just immigration reform as a whole, because his wife is an immigrant. And so to me, I would have thought that, you know, one of his big advantages would have been for Melania Trump to be an advisor when it comes to the immigration problem in America. I mean, she could have been his biggest cheerleader, and unfortunately, that did not happen. And so immigration reform was one thing that I actually think, if I had to look back on all the great things that the president did, this administration dropped the ball when it came to immigration reform, which could have been a huge opportunity because our first lady was also our first immigrant first lady as well.
Steve, what are your thoughts on this immigration bill? And, you know, Brandon raises an interesting point there. Joe Biden's been in office publicly for about 50 years. Why didn't he do this in those 50 years? Why has it now suddenly become so important?
Well, no one's been able to do immigration reform. It's not just Joe Biden. This has been an elusive piece of legislation for decades in this country. And what's interesting is, you know, I'm not sure that putting forth a bill that doesn't have much of a chance, much of a stand in the Senate is the best idea. I mean, to basically say we're going to create a path to citizenship, but not offer anything to conservatives who would need to get on board with this kind of thing. There's nothing in there about border security. There's nothing in there that would speak to moderates or conservatives at all. And so, you know, it might be something that he could get through the House, but he's got a 50-50 Senate. And yes, everybody's talking about how the Democrats have the White House, the Senate, and the House. But it's a 50-50 Senate, and it just takes one Democrat to peel off and say, I'm not on board with anything here for things to fall apart. And, you know, he's going to have to do, I think, a better job, or Democrats in Congress are going to have to do a better job of putting some meat into this bill that's going to attract a bipartisan consensus to get this thing passed.
And I have the name of that one Democrat. His name is Joe Manchin,
Right.
and he's from West Virginia, a state that went solidly for Donald Trump. And I can also answer the question about immigration reform. I worked for Bill Frist when he was Senate Majority Leader and George Bush was President of the United States. Comprehensive immigration reform is a loser. It is very difficult to get the sides on board. And that includes the free market wing of the Republican Party and the labor wing of the Democratic Party, and that they're often working either at odds within their own party or odds against each other. That what has been more successful when it comes to immigration reform is doing it piecemeal and starting with border security. I think it's interesting that Joe Biden is in this really tough spot. We have a 9,000 strong Honduran migrant caravan making its way to our southern border at the time when our economy is, you know, on very shaky ground. We have the COVID virus that is sweeping the globe. And by the way, the Biden administration is not lifting the travel restrictions from the UK, Brazil, and Europe. So what are they going to tell their left-wing immigration activists about stopping people at the border when at the same time the administration is saying, we're stopping this other group at the border? I think they're in a very difficult, tough spot here when it comes to this particular issue. Right. Politically, if they started with border security, they could get that bipartisan support, but the left of their party certainly doesn't want that.
Okay, Brandon, let's talk about Joe Biden's other big plan. That is his $1.9 trillion economic and COVID rescue package. It sounds great, but this is what the nominee for Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen had to say about that rescue package. Let's listen.
Neither the president-elect nor I proposed this relief package without an appreciation for the country's debt burden. But right now, with interest rates at historic lows, the smartest thing we can do is act big.
Is that the smartest thing Biden can do, Brendan? Act big?
Well, you know, there's a couple of problems. Is that we've got a big problem, and the big problem is that we've got almost millions of people who are out of work. And so the question is, you know, when it's not only is that our money, but how do we avoid inflation? Because no one's talking about the fact that where's this money coming from? Oh, it's coming from our national deficit. So the challenge that we have is one, when we talk about the stimulus checks, is we have to decide, well, what's enough and what's too little. But the other part is that when we talk about this stimulus, people are important, but so are businesses. There are businesses right now that are literally going out of business, and in some cases, not coming back. That should be the priority when it comes to who gets this money and who does not, as opposed to just giving out free money.
Okay, joining us now is Nate Lerner. He is the co-founder and executive director of Build the Wave. Nate, great to have you with us. Glad you can join us. We're talking about, of course, the departure of Donald Trump and the arrival of Joe Biden. And let me ask you first off, as Donald Trump gets ready to leave the White House, what do you think he'll be remembered for?
Well, he'll certainly be remembered for what happened on the 6th and the insurrection that he led. He'll absolutely be remembered for the big lie he's been telling the last 4 years, which is that the election has been rigged against him. And he'll definitely be remembered for the extremism and conspiracy theories that he spread and the way he radicalized the Republican Party, which has really moved away, very far away from its Reagan-era roots, and is no longer the party of small government, but really the party of extremism and conspiracy theories and lies and propaganda. And it's really unfortunate to see, because there was a time when Democrats and Republicans could work together, but now you have half of the Republican Party believing that Democrats, kill small children and run have a secret group that runs the world. It's really disgusting what the party has turned into, and I worry for the future of this country because of the way Republican politics has just disintegrated into nothingness.
All right, Amy, that's quite an indictment on the Republican Party there.
When is this mythical time when Republicans and Democrats got along like cats and dogs and lions and lambs? I was the United States Senate, the Senate Majority Leader, Bill Frist. I was his speechwriter for the Senate floor. That was early 2000s. And I can tell you, every single day, a Democratic senator went to the Senate floor to slam Republicans and slam then President George Bush. All this talk about unity is usually about coercing people into agreeing with you. We don't need unity. We need compromise. And we need both sides to be able to speak without censorship on the internet, for example, to be able to negotiate and compromise and willing to take half a loaf because they're not going to get a whole loaf. I don't see that kind of compromise coming from the Democratic Party, AOC and the Squad, for example, and also on the right. And the right is going to probably be acting like, the opposition party for these first 2 years in the hopes of picking up a majority in the House. But again, Donald Trump is leaving tomorrow, and this job is now being handed over to President Joe Biden. We've got a lot on his plate. It's, being president of the United States is never easy, and these particular times even more challenging.
Nate, were you trying to say something there?
I was saying, AOC is not currently the president of the United States. Joe Biden is, and Joe Biden has made it very clear that actually, despite what a lot of people in the party feel right now, a lot of the frustration they feel, that he is willing to extend an olive branch to the Republicans and Mitch McConnell. It is now on them to show that they're willing to move forward and solve the bigger problems that our nation has.
Okay, I want to get to Steve. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just add to this. This actually could ironically be an interesting time, because let's not forget, Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden have both served more than 30 years. They're good friends. And so hopefully that friendship, we'll see that when it comes to policy at a national level now.
Steve, I want to get to something that Brendan talked about a moment ago, and that is the unemployment rate in the United States, something that Joe Biden will inherit as he takes office tomorrow on Wednesday. At the current level, the unemployment rate is 7.9%. That's just over 12.5 million people, but economists tell us that this is an artificial figure. The real figure is closer to 30 million. It just depends on the way the Department of Labor calculates who is unemployed. What are Biden's priorities for getting these people back to work?
Well, that's one of his biggest issues, and that's the conundrum that Donald Trump found himself in the last year, and it's Joe Biden's issue moving forward. And I think the first thing, obviously, is to make sure the pandemic ends, and that's getting people vaccinated, and that's the big cause. At least most people will point to that as the cause for the economy sinking the way it has. And so that's the first step in terms of turning this around. And then you mentioned his pandemic relief bill that he's put forward. Now, he's going to do a little bit of work on that because, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but you got to look at everything through the lens of a 50-50 Senate. And there are plenty of people on both sides who did not like what was in that initial proposal. You heard people, progressives, who said that wasn't big enough. You heard conservatives say this is a non-starter with funding for state and local governments. And so they've got to work out a lot of issues if they want to get this relief package moving forward. They haven't been able to do it in the past several months. And it doesn't look like that what Biden has proposed at least a couple of weeks ago is going to be the answer to get this through even a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House.
Nate, Biden's cabinet is being described as the most racially diverse, many women in the cabinet. But besides these optics, what kind of qualifications do they bring to the job, the people who've been nominated to serve? USA Today said Biden is putting a bunch of retreads in his cabinet, and that is a relief. Now, some people may say, yes, that is a relief because these people are known quantities. It might ensure some kind of continuity, but others would say, well, it's more of the same.
Well, the big thing is experience. He's putting in people who are dedicated public servants, who have a long history of serving this country, of serving in government, who know what they're doing. And unlike Donald Trump, I think you're going to see an administration, a presidency, and a government that responds to problems rather than creating them. And this will be truly refreshing, I think, as Americans to see the federal government using its full ability to take on this pandemic, to take on economic inequality, to take on the looming climate crisis, to take on all the problems we have abroad. And I, for one, am really excited to see a government that actually does its job for a change and doesn't pass the buck down to the states instead, which are minuscule compared to the federal government.
Right. Brandon, I've just got less than a minute left, but I want to ask you about this. You know, Biden has often talked in the last few weeks, during the campaign as well, of wanting to be a healer, a uniter, bringing the country together. But given the levels of polarization that we've seen, not just during the campaigns, in fact, over the past 4 years, is this going to be possible to unite the country?
I think Joe Biden's main priority right now needs to be to get the pandemic underway. Anything else is second nature. But let me go back really quick to what you said before.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is a return to the status quo. All of these guys are Washington insiders. That's what, unfortunately, you're going to get. You're not going to get anything new. You're not going to get anything innovative. You're going to get a return to the same, and some people are okay with that, unfortunately.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.